there's another nice restaurant on the other side of the road. And I always remember being sat in there one day, and Lisa Minnelli came and sat on the next table to me, like, you know, she'd been working over 80 weeks or something like that. But working in the studio was a great pleasure because there was always nice people around there. Actually, I used to be the manager of the studio quite well. The publicity man from Elstree was always a great help for anything I wanted. And the team on Star Wars, you know, they were a really nice crowd to work with. And so it was all mainly all good. There weren't many bad things about it.
Okay.
Hi there. How did you feel when you first saw the completed film for the first time?
Amazed. I was amazed when I saw one of that. Well, I'll tell you what happened. We had no idea as to what the film was going to be like. I had no idea whatsoever. I mean, so people used to come up to me and they say, "What's this film like? You're doing that at Elstree." I said, "I was quite all over it. Should you ask me?" And because, well, it was a strange film to work on, wasn't it? Colin would tell you, because things were, most of the time things were never ready. There were all sorts of things going wrong all the time. There had all these funny creatures walking around in funny outfits and R2-D2 units and things like this, you know.
We never knew what we were going to do from one day to the next, did we?
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't have scripts. They'd just give you a page when you got in to show what was being done that day. So a lot of it was sort of made up as we went along.
Yeah, but then of course what happened was that the film, when it was finished, I thought, that's it, go off we go and do something else over there. And then the next thing we know, we get all this publicity coming over from America. So the film had just come out in America, and everybody was saying what a fantastic movie it was. And the other queues were going around the block for ages, and for weeks on end. And people were going into the cinema, staying in there for 2 and 3 days to see the movie time and time again. Then out of the blue, I got a cable from a very famous American film director. You know Russ Meyer? Great friend of mine. I did a terrible film for him called Black Snake, by the way. It's a terrible movie, but it was great fun to do because we filmed in Barbados. But anyway, this cable came from Russ Meyer and it says, "Congratulations, Dave, you're in the biggest movie of all time. By the way, did you know they've overdubbed your voice?" And that was that was the first time we had any inkling of basically what the film was going to, how successful the film was going to be. Anybody else?
Anybody else?
Any more questions? Oh, come on.
There's one over here. What's that?
Hi. Can you tell us about the audition procedures for you to get the role of Darth Vader?
There was no audition, actually. Years ago, in 1970, I did a very famous film, working fairly close to here, and it was Stanley Kubrick's Clockwork Orange. Everybody remember Clockwork Orange? Great movie. Anyway, the film came out in 1971 and came out to a dearth of terrible publicity. Everybody said what a terrible movie it was and how sexual it was and how violent it was and things like this. And Stanley, unfortunately, started getting death threats. Everybody was threatening to kill him. So he just turned around and said, "Well, that's that. I'm going to take the film off the circuit and nobody will ever see the film again." And which is what he did. And of course, you couldn't see the movie until Stanley died. And then the movie came out and it went on TV and it was, you know, everybody could see the movie again. But in the brief period it was out in 1971, George Lucas saw it. And next thing I know, George has come over in 1976 and set up in the 20th Century Fox offices in central London. And then turned around to the managing director of 20th Century Fox, it was a guy called Peter Beale. And he said, "Do me a favour," he said, "can you find me this guy Dave Prowse?" And Peter said, "Well, unfortunately, I know him quite well, he's a good friend." And so they called me in, and I went in, I met up with George, and to me reminded me of a young student. And he took me into a room where they had all these conceptual drawings all the way around the room. And it was all scenes, you know, from the proposed movie. And then he turned around to me and he said, "Look," he said, "I'm doing this film called Star Wars, and I'd like to offer you one of 2 parts in the movie." I thought, "Well, this is great. I've never been offered 2 parts in a movie, let alone, you know, this. And so I said, what are the 2 parts? He said, well, the first one's a character called Chewbacca. I said, what's Chewbacca? He says, like a hairy gorilla that goes through the film on the side of the goodies. And I thought, oh God, no, 3 months in the gorilla skin, like, that's all I could think of. And I said, no, I said, you can keep that one, George. I said, what's the other one? And he said, well, the other one's the big villain of the film, a character called Darth Vader, you see. And I said, don't say any more, George, I'll have the villain's part. And he said, well, tell me for why. I said, well, if you think back on all the movies that you've ever seen where there are good guys and bad guys, you always remember the bad guy. And he said, Dave, he said, I think you've made a very wise decision. He said, because nobody will ever forget Darth Vader. And here we are, 35 years later, travelling around the world on the back of Darth. It's wonderful. So there you are, no audition, no audition as such. Yes? Right down here, down in the front. Yes, third one along. Sorry.
Okay. Did you know your voice was going to be dubbed?
No, I didn't actually. No, the question of the overdubbing came up. The film, we finished the film, and what happened was they couldn't get all the special effects that they wanted in the UK, and chased back to America to get the special effects. And then, of course, when they were in America, they then had a choice. I did the voice all the way through all 3 movies, but I knew right from the very beginning that everything I was saying was coming through the mask, and it was all muffled. There was no way that they could use it for reproduction purposes. So I automatically thought, wrongly by all accounts, that I would go into the sound studios here at the studio there and overdub all the dialogue. Okay? And but what they did is they got to the end of the movie, and of course everybody was in a mad panic to get the film finished. And so they chased back to America, and when they were in America, they had a choice of either employing a voiceover artist in America, and presumably get somebody who would be really good and they know they were going to get everything right, or alternatively fly me out from London over to Hollywood, and it possibly not being what they wanted. And so obviously the decision was to employ somebody else, to employ the very best guy they could find, and that was James Earl Jones, who I think did a wonderful job. I met him actually a couple of weeks ago. He came over to England to do he was doing Driving Miss Daisy, which is a lovely play with Vanessa Redgrave. And I got invited to go and meet up with him in the interval between the 2 houses. And we had a lovely, spent about an hour and a half with him, and it was really very, very pleasant and nice to meet him at long last. First time in 30 years that we'd met.
Another one down the front.
So when you did the stunts, did you do any more stunts, and did you nail the one where you went for the window on the first take?
There were lots of stunts, particularly in The Empire and Return of the Jedi. The window was just one. There was a great many flipping and somersaulting things. And one I do remember, I had to come backwards, head first, on my back, out of a chute, and see how many somersaults I could go into before I went into the box ring. And because it was slightly different from the way you normally do falls, I decided to test it, and I lived near Teddington, so I took a couple of big friends, a plank of wood, and we went up to Teddington Lock, where it was about 30 feet into the water. And I said, right, you hold the plank over the edge, I shall go upside down on it. I'm going to fall off it and see how many somersaults I can get before I hit the water. And I did it a couple of times, and then I suddenly realised we had an audience. And somebody called the police and said, there's this mental character sliding off a board, somersaulting into the air and crashing into the river, and we think maybe he should be taken away to a place of safety. So I had to explain the reason behind it, and it was very funny when we thought about it later on when I was actually doing the stunt. But there was a lot of falling and fighting, and then there was the stuff in Norway under the helicopter. One that does stand out was I had to go up about 30 feet into the air under the helicopter, hanging onto a trapeze, and just release and fall into the snow. Very simple. However, the people that pushed the helicopter into the hangar to keep it from getting frozen up the night before caught one of the rotor blades on the side, and unbeknown to Mark Wolf, the helicopter pilot. So when he took me out, the helicopter went out of control, and I was hanging underneath it, not strapped in on this trapeze, and we were about 70 feet up instead of 30, and I was looking down, all I could see were rocks. And it started to swing as he was trying to control the helicopter. The pendulum started to swing backwards and forwards, and I had all this clobber on it, it was very heavy, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to hold on for much longer. So as I looked down, I could see that on the maximum swing to the left, I could see white snow. Directly underneath me and to the right, it was all rocks. So I made the decision to wait till I'd swung maximum to the left and let go, which I did, and it seemed forever going through the air, and then crash. I went into deep snow, and as I pulled myself out, I was only 3 feet clear of the rocks from about 70 feet. So that one stood out as one that went wrong.
Anyone? Just today, what's your favourite film? Star Wars film with Apple 6, and what did you think of the prequels?
My favourite of the three was Empire. I think that was, for me, that was well, I had the nicest experiences working on 3, and I thought 3 was a really good story, and I enjoyed working with Irvin Kershner. What did I think of the prequels? Not a lot, to be perfectly honest. I think there was the technology, obviously, that was available for episodes 1, 2, 3 was so much better than anything we had in 4, 5, 6, and I think that the films were I won't say ruined by the technology, but it's I personally didn't like the first 3 very much. I wasn't very happy with them.
Morning. Obviously, Dave, you've got a very physical role, and yourself with being a stuntman. What injuries have you incurred in your career, and what were the worst ones?
Well, in 45 years of stunting, there have been a few. I haven't had any major ones. I would probably say that I've had more injuries riding motorcycles and doing racing in motorcycles than I have on stunts. The only one I did when I first started as a stuntman, and I thought that I was indestructible, I did a high fall into boxes. I didn't have enough boxes. And being young and up for anything, I thought I could make do, and I went through the boxes, and I had I fractured my pelvis, only in a minor way, and that was the only time I was out for maybe 6 or 7 weeks. Other than that, the injuries have all been ones that I've been able to work through. Funny enough, the most serious injury I ever had, in terms of needing time to recover, was doing dog agility, running. About 4 years ago, where I had a double fracture of the Achilles tendon, and in all the years I've been doing stunts, I've never had anything that was quite as bad as that. So stunts are safer than motorcycling, and they're safer than running a dog around the course.
I'm very fortunate because I've never had any accidents. Not doing any stunt. I came very close to a nasty one once when I was doing a film with Terry Gilliam, a thing called Jabberwocky. And I had it was quite interesting actually, because they rang me up when Jabberwocky came back, and they said you do ride, don't you? And I said oh yes, I regularly. I'd never been on a horse in my life, but you never ever admit that you can't do anything when somebody asks you if you can do something. And so I then waited for the film to start. And then they rang me up one day and they said, we want to talk to you about your jousting scenes. I said, pardon? They said, yes, you were playing the Black Knight, and the Black Knight is going to have a jousting scene with the Red Knight. I said, I better go and have some lessons. So I went and found stables very close to where I lived, and I used to go every morning just to get myself comfortable on the horse, you see. And then eventually what happened was the jousting scenes never came to anything, but we did one stunt where we were working a lot in at the top of a quarry, and the quarry was actually full of water, you know, and I was in full armour on this horse, and the idea is that the horse was going to walk along this bank, and with me on the back of the horse, you see. But as I said, I was in full body armour, you see. Anyway, something happened right at the very beginning and spooked the horse, and I went over the back of the he said I fell off the side of the horse. But unfortunately, with these big, what we call postilions, which are things with the metal things which go over your feet, my feet were in these postilions, and they got stuck in those stirrups, and the horse bolted and dragged me all the way along this top of this quarry at the top, and with this, which as I said was full of water. If I'd gone over it, I'd have been a goner, definitely. But that's as close as I ever came. Fortunately, they managed to stop the horse, and I sort of dusted myself off, and that was it. But I came very, very close. That was the nearest I've ever come to a bad injury. And I've done fight scenes, and I've done all sorts of things. But I've never really specialised in being a stuntman. I think being a big man, they expect you to be able to sort of handle yourself for fight scenes and things like this, you know. But when it comes to sort of falling off of cliffs and jumping out of planes, and that's not me. No.
Time for a couple more questions, can you please?
Anybody else?
One over there.
Good morning. Question for Dave. Dave, which of your roles do you think had a greater impact on kids in the 70s? Darth Vader or the Green Crossbow Man?
Oh, you were talking about the best job I've ever had there. The Green Crossbow was the best job I've ever had in my career. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had 14 years of being the Green Cross Code man, and I used to do 3 schools a day, 5 days a week for the entire school period. I did that over a 14-year period, and because I did it from 1976 right through until 1990. And we did 15 television commercials. It was an amazing campaign. I loved every minute of it. I loved going around to the schools. But the success, when we started the campaign, the actual road accident figures in Great Britain were running at 40,000 a year. 40,000 children were getting knocked down, injured and killed on the roads in Great Britain. When we finished the campaign 14 years later, we halved the road accident figures. We'd gone down from 40,000 down to less than 20,000. And if you added it all up, we'd actually saved something in the region of 250,000 children's lives with the Green Cross Code campaign. So that's something I'm very, very proud of. But the one thing I'm always very quick to add to this, and that is the campaign was so successful because all the kids knew that I was Darth Vader, and there I was stood up in my Superman outfit, in my Green Cross outfit, talking to the children. And the kids all knew that it was Darth Vader talking to them about road safety. And I used to end these talks, I used to do these talks. If I had about 5 minutes left over, I used to have about 300 kids in front of me, or a big audience, something like this, you know, but full of kids, and ranging from the very young kids at the beginning to the older, like 10, 11-year-olds at the back. And I used to say, now, anybody got any questions, you say? I never, ever got one question about road safety. Every question I got was about Star Wars, and as I said, and it was because of the fact that I was Darth Vader. It made it the most. That was what really made the campaign so successful.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for on this session. But
that's a shame.
flown by. But Dave and Colin are here all day. There'll be plenty of chance to meet them. But for the moment, can you please show your thanks to our guests?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.